I'm kind of weird about social media these days. I used to be really into Facebook when I first moved to college. It kept me in touch with my friends and family back home, and it was nice to feel like I wasn't so far away from them. I built up a collection of photos, checked into places, and shared every little detail of my life so that everyone could see how great I was doing. My entire world was online for all to see. And because I'm dumb, I was pretty liberal about my privacy settings too. So one day, I got this message request from someone I've never heard of before. It just said, "Hey." I checked their profile to see if they were in the same class as me or something, but it turned out we had no mutual friends, and they lived on the other side of the country. So, as you can imagine, I was pretty confused as to why they were messaging me, but I was also curious. So I just replied, "Hey man, do we know each other?" I didn't know what I was expecting him to say when I saw that he was typing a reply. And I remember thinking that maybe he was looking for someone with the same name as me or something. But then his response popped up, and all it said was, "I'm going to kill you," with the cowboy emoji at the end. I stared at the message for a few seconds, not scared at all, just like, what the hell? I mean, the cowboy emoji was weird. Then I took another look at this dude's profile and saw a bunch more pictures of him shooting guns and wielding knives in the woods somewhere. I mean, that was at least a little intimidating, but what got me were all these rants he had posted about how much his life sucked, how unfair things were, and how he'd love to take it out on someone who deserved it. There were also videos that were unplayable because they had been removed by Facebook admins, but they still had captions like, "That chainsaw goes through his neck like butter, crying laughing face." That's when I started to worry. It didn't seem like this guy was just having fun, playing a prank on a stranger to scare them. He seemed legitimately crazy and seriously angry. That nutcase could have been studying every one of my statuses, picture posts, and check-ins for weeks before he decided to message me. He could have screenshotted all my stuff too, so it didn't matter if I had blocked him or not. He had my name, my school, where I hung out, the names of my friends and family, everything. I thought maybe I was just making a big deal out of nothing at the time, but later on, I could barely sleep thinking about it. How horrifying a thought it was that he could have been driving across the country as I lay there in bed, having just picked a person at random to kill, and being crazy or angry enough to actually do it. You can call me paranoid all you like, but I just couldn't get this guy out of my head. The idea of him hunting me down or whatever was unnerving enough. I mean, he had enough information on me to be able to ambush me at a dozen different places that I just couldn't avoid because they were school or grocery shopping or just my dorm room. But what had me freaked out is that this creep might have been able to learn so much about me, and I was dumb or vain enough to let it happen in the first place. I knew the internet was full of crazies, I just didn't expect it to reach out and touch me in the way that it did. If I didn't make it clear already, I did actually block the guy, but some weird grim curiosity had me unblocking his account one day so I could sort of check up on him and make sure he wasn't about to do anything too nuts. There were no rants, no threatening statuses, just a long series of photo posts that made me think he'd taken up photography or something. I was scrolling through them when I started to get this familiar feeling from looking at the scenery. I couldn't be 100% sure, but I'd swear a lot of the pictures he'd taken were of things that were around the town I was living in. There were no street signs or anything, nothing to actually confirm that he had actually driven across the country, but if he wasn't taking pictures in a town that looked remarkably similar to mine, then I could have been in a lot of trouble. I expected that guy to jump me for weeks after. I was a complete nervous wreck. It messed with my sleep, I lost a bunch of weight, being in an almost constant state of anxiety for the better part of a month. He didn't find me, and nothing happened as a result, thank God. But just knowing he could pretty much come and get me anytime he liked got to me in ways I never even imagined it ever could. We put ourselves on Front Street in a big way with social media, and it could literally be anyone out there just lurking on our profiles. So, like I said, now I'm kind of weird and cautious about social media. I don't put too much out there, I don't use my real name, I run the strictest privacy settings possible, and I really recommend you do too. I live in a place called Mountain City, down here in Tennessee. So this is going back to about 10 years after I graduated high school when this really messed up story started going around about one of the other kids I graduated with. It starts in the worst possible way too, because the first I heard of it was a buddy of mine texting me saying, "Did you hear about Billy Payne?" I texted back saying no, and he then called me sounding all serious to say that Billy and his baby mom got shot just a few days before. Like someone rolled up to their house, busted open the door, and just shot them both right there in front of the TV. They were legit executed. Some of the papers said it was a single shot to the head that killed both victims, and how Billy's throat had been slashed. We started wondering why someone might do something like that. If it was a random psycho killer, or if he was moving weight and managed to step on someone's toes. I do remember hearing about Billy messing around with drugs a few times, so it wasn't totally out of the question, but he must have done something serious to have whoever it was shoot his baby mom right there too. Like, that's real cold-blooded, you know? But even saying that, he just didn't seem like the kind of guy to get involved with serious gangsters. Anyway, the cops caught the two guys who committed the murder. One of them is this Vietnam vet who said in court that he was ex-CIA too. Anyway, they got charged, went up in front of a judge, and you know why they said they did it? Because the CIA had told them that the two murder victims were part of some evil group that was planning on killing their daughter. But in reality, Billy Payne and his baby mom were shot dead because they unfriended one of the killer's daughters on Facebook. Can you actually believe that? That someone would take social media that seriously and actually kill somebody because of a friend request? I mean, I didn't. I was convinced there was more to it than that. And as much as it made me feel like a gorehound, I stayed interested in the trial to find out why they'd done something so horrendous. The cops found Billy's baby alive in his mom's arms. Poor kid is gonna grow up without a mother and father. But then, yeah, that's the only reason or motive established, and the prosecutor brings up Facebook messages detailing intense arguments between Billy, his girlfriend, and the girl who got unfriended. They had argued about it back and forth for hours, with some pretty harsh language exchanged too, and then the girl says she's going to go tell her dad. I don't know if the girl just didn't expect her dad to actually go kill them, or that she knew he'd overreact, but if it's the latter, then she has blood on her hands too, as far as I'm concerned. It's the way she told her dad too. She invented some fake CIA agent that got in touch with her dad over Facebook to tell them all this messed up stuff about how their daughter was in grave danger. I suppose it just scares me that people could take something like Facebook that seriously. But it's obvious that some people out there put so much belief in social media that they're willing to kill over perceived insults or whatever. That's why I keep my social media presence pretty small these days. Aside from all the ratchet drama that goes on in our timelines every so often, it's just not a healthy place for some people. And it kind of blows my mind that Facebook could be the reason anyone got shot. Sometimes Facebook just seems like a powder keg of trouble. It has this weird ability to help exacerbate drama to the point where someone gets hurt. A really good example of this is what happened back in 2012 in the town I live in here in Holland. So there were these two friends, about 15 or 16 years old, who went to a New Year's Eve house party together. They ended up getting pretty drunk and having an argument because one of the girls was making out with guys, and her friend didn't like it. The next day, one friend basically calls the other a slut on Facebook. The friend who got called slutty complained to one of the guys she had been making out with at the party, who said that if she wanted to, he could teach the judgmental friend a lesson. I think it says a lot about how petty and spiteful teenage girls can be to each other, but the girl who got accused of being slutty said yes to this, wanting her friend to regret saying mean things to her. So instead of just sending over some rude messages or whatever, this guy gets in touch with another friend of his, who agrees to actually go over to this girl's house to beat her up or something. Yeah, actual violence because of a few comments on goddamn Facebook. Only he doesn't just slap her around or whatever, he takes a knife over to the girl's house, calls her to the door, and then stabs her repeatedly with it. When this girl's dad appears to try and defend her, the kid then stabs him too. The girl ended up dying a week or so later in the hospital, and it was a huge news story here in Holland. But I think the really horrible thing is that the kid who did the actual stabbing only spent a year in juvenile detention with a few years of probation afterward. The two kids who organized the killing ended up getting more time in prison than the actual murderer, but even then, it was only 2 years. I know the prosecutor tried to get them more time in jail, but that didn't work in the end, and these kids basically got off super lightly for legitimately murdering someone. And all because of an argument that unfolded over Facebook. That was the hardest part to swallow. The Dutch media even christened the whole thing Facebookmoord as a nickname, which basically means the Facebook murder in Dutch. I'm not saying the whole murder wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Facebook, but honestly, there's no doubt that it made it easier to organize. I know for a fact that the older guy managed to get in touch with the guy who actually carried out the attack via Facebook, and maybe he wouldn't have been able to organize that without it. Stuff like Facebook is supposed to bring us all together, right? So it's just a terrible thought that people can then use it to rip each other's families apart.